Hey,
Yep.
Jake.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Sweet. How's things
How are
going?
you? It's good. It's all right. How are you?
Good. Sorry if my voice sounds. I'm a
You're
little somehow sick, even though I moved from the Midwest to Florida.
No
Somehow.
worries. Yeah, I saw on something you're in Fort Lauderdale now.
Yeah. Yeah. I just moved down here, like, I think it was last week on Monday.
Oh, wow. So you're like brand new. That's where I'm from.
Really?
hmm
What made you leave? Too hectic?
My parents left. So, like, I went to high school there and I went to college in Fort Myers briefly.
Okay.
And then my parents moved, and like most of my family's in Georgia. So I just ended up leaving to be closer to my family.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's definitely a big change for me, especially with the Midwest. I don't know if you've ever been up
I haven't.
north.
I've heard, but yeah, it seems like a huge change. And Fort
Yeah,
Lauderdale is
definitely slower.
very different. So,
Yeah, definitely a lot faster paced. But yeah, so getting into everything first, I want to talk about more so. Um, sorry, there's a lot going on. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll put up Canva so I can give like a whiteboard on like more of essentially more so like a presentation type thing to show you more so what's going on. Because
okay.
obviously you're saying that you're like leptin resistant, you're dealing with like a lot of different functional issues, like hormone imbalance and all that. So what I'll do is I'll share my screen and then show you kind of more so what the process is entailing.
Okay.
Okay. So okay, so it all usually starts with obviously the hypothalamus. Okay, and then what that does is signals to your adrenal glands. And so what I like to call this is the dynamic system. And what it is essentially looking at the body and just all of its like organ systems, hormones, and um, pretty much everything in unison. So obviously just like looking at the body and it working together, obviously because we're not working in isolation because that'd be more Western conventional. And then
Right.
so it'd go down to the thyroid and then to the cell. So I'll go through here. Okay, it's the cell. Okay, so and then the GI goes to the liver, and I'll bring. Sorry, it's. Okay, so obviously we have this like whole ecosystem here. Okay, so we have the hypothalamus, signals to the adrenal glands, and then from the adrenal glands to the GI tract, and then also to your sex hormones like testosterone, estrogen, and your androgens. And then we have insulin down here, which is like a key converter to sex hormones. And then you have your liver on your gut. All right, so you have the gastrointestinal tract, and then you have the liver, which is two different things because the liver detoxes out like hormones and toxins, obviously, and then the gut obviously works on digestion, absorption, and all that. So
Right.
we got that. So, and then we have from our adrenal glands to our thyroid. All right, and then down to the cell. So this is like the cell. Okay, so overview. So we have all this, we have this whole ecosystem, and there's imbalances here. Okay, so we have very high stress, coming from, um, you know, under eating, overtraining, overworking, emotional stress, and all those types of stressors. So what it does is it'll produce more CRH. So more CRH is going to be coming from the hypothalamus gland, signaling to the adrenals. So then what happens now is that your adrenals are working overdrive. either like adrenal fatigue or sympathetic dominance, essentially.
Right.
So
What
then
is
we're throwing off
CRH? I've never heard of
so
that.
so it's called corticotropin releasing hormone. So every time your body hears a response, like even if it's like, because we want to think about like hormesis. Like hormesis is like a negative response creating a pro-adaptation. So it's like fasting or working out, like that, or calorie deficit, like that's a form of hormesis. So like that, we take that stress. So any stress that we take in signals. All right. How it signals is it has to use, specific hormones and neurotransmitters. And so CRH is corticotropin releasing hormone.
Okay.
So it signals to, technically, we want to be technical here. So it'll signal to the pituitary gland. Then from the pituitary gland, it'll go to the adrenals. Now that ain't the end all be all, because you also have you also have TRH and TSH too. So that's also signaling to the thyroid. But to keep it like very simplified, we're just going to look at it like this. Okay, so we have very high stress coming there. So then we're also like working in dominance. Like we have just sympathetic dominance. So what that does is also like throws off our digestion, our gut lining, because I don't think people understand. So like when you're very stressed out, just like how when you're training, it tears down the muscle fiber because that's a stress. But when we're very stressed out too, it tears down the gut lining because that's a muscle as well. Right. And when it starts to tear down, it starts to split, and then obviously it becomes permeable, and then all of that happens. Okay, and then when we're not digesting nutrients correctly, or we're dealing with some type of imbalance like sympathetic dominance, our GI tract can't secrete the enzymes correctly, so we're dealing with like acid reflux, GERD. So so everything's like tying in now. So if we're dealing with that, and then we're dealing with very high stress, we're not digesting the food correctly, we have poor gut motility, our liver starts to take a hit. So what the liver does is it starts to essentially get backed up because we're not able to detox the hormones, toxins, excess dioxins out of the body because there's poor liver detox and just poor liver pathways, if that makes sense.
It does.
Because you obviously get rid of toxins by stool, urine, or sweat. And if you aren't like regularly having bowel movements or dealing with constipation, like that could be a sign of like hormone imbalance too, because your hormones are getting converted to in the liver. So like this whole ecosystem is taking a hit. So then if we go to the other side, like if our adrenals are shooting up, then we have imbalanced hormones. So if we think about it as if the liver having poor detox, the estrogen can't get out correctly. So then we have estrogen dominance. Okay, we have high androgens. We have high adrenals, which then can spike our androgens and blood sugars, which then you can get PCOS-like symptoms. You can have high testosterone. You can also have low progesterone because it's something called progesterone steal. And that's when the adrenals want to take hormone from progesterone and use it for cortisol. Okay, so we have low progesterone. So we have low progesterone. We have poor estrogen detox, so we have estrogen dominance. So we have like PMS symptoms. We have, cystic acne. We have just all those things, weight in the hips and thighs. Okay. And then on top of that, our blood sugar is maybe not resistant, but insensitive. So like our cells can't hear the message of, insulin. So then obviously blood sugar stays jacked up. And then obviously it has a relationship with cortisol. And now you can imagine like what's happened with the thyroid. Everything's taken a hit.
Yeah, it's definitely downregulated.
Yeah, exactly. And so what does the thyroid go to? Well, obviously we know that, conversion, like from T4 into T3, we know that T3 is the dominant, hormone of the body because it speaks to every cell in the body. So what it is like now we have like poor thyroid hormone, but particularly like our T3 is underproducing. Okay, so obviously you're hypo, depending on like your antibodies, maybe you have Hashimoto's, like POTS, something like that. So it's just all like everything's downregulated. So what's happening is that obviously we have inflammation around the cell, but essentially we just have poor cellular metabolism. So you can also say that we have poor methylation, we have mitochondrial dysfunction, just all these smart technical words that just mean I feel like shit, and the thing is that we can't just like we can't throw a caloric deficit on this and some training, and just live a life. Like, we can't do that anymore. It's you, male or female, to be honest.
That's what got me here, right? Like, honestly, like, so many years of just under eating and just under eating, overtraining, stress, and so I like that will never work for me.
Exactly. And like, it does work when you're that age. Like, it's not like calories in, calories out isn't like ideal, but like, understand that these processes in the body regulate what you do with those calories. So like, if I know that if I have this avocado, it's 160 calories, but how will my body process that? How will it actually, like, how will the system, like, use it? And the system's not efficient.
Right.
The system is downregulated. So what happens is people are trying to work against the system, but not improve the fuel efficiency of the system, which is metabolic capacity or metabolism. Because a lot of people right now, like in the fitness, obviously muscle is very metabolic. Like, if I gave you an extra 5 pounds of lean muscle tissue, you feel a little bit leaner. But that's not the whole picture. I can't just train you. I can do both, matter of fact, but we're trying to work on the body. So we look at it like this. So what happens is that we can't optimize what the cell is putting out until we optimize what it's getting in. Okay, because everything is a negative feedback loop, meaning it goes in like a circle, essentially. So if the cell is putting out poor messaging systems, we'll actually fix on what the cell is taking in. Okay, so if I was to almost write it up again, because I just made it trash, but that's okay.
It's fine.
Wait, so out of all these things, how many of do you think you're dealing with?
So I feel like my gut issues are okay, and that's probably because when this all started, after I had my daughter, she's 8, so it's been going on for a long time. Even before that, I've been working on my gut to some extent. I probably need to like be better, but I have less issues with like, I don't have like constipation and that kind of stuff. Like, all that is fine. In terms of like,
that's actually completely normal. Like, obviously there's a ton of people that have GI issues, but like sometimes it's more than just the GI issues. Like, it's not just,
right.
I have a gut issue.
I mean, I have a lot of symptoms of things, right? I would say like that feels normal. And then like in terms of like my cycle, it used to be really bad. Like, it used to be really short. Like, we talk about like a 25-day cycle, 23-day cycle, which is not good. Now it's totally normal. And it has been for a while. Like, we're talking like clockwork, really good, but still a lot of PMS symptoms. Yes, I'm super tired. Like, I know there's something going on with my thyroid. I know something's up with my adrenals. Like, when I have to put my makeup on in the morning, like my arms hurt to hold them up. Like, that's not normal, right? And it's not from working out. Like, I work out, but I know it's just, I feel so fatigued. So yeah, I mean, I have a lot of these symptoms happening.
Yeah, 100%. So thing is now though, is I can't work on it all together at once because that'd just be inefficient. So we need to work a process. Okay. We need to work a process that works in all these systems, intercommunication.
Right.
So what I do is I obviously flush you. And so by flushing you, I'm working on hypothalamus, adrenals, liver, thyroid. Okay. So I'm working on all those because I'm not going to work on the gut first. I'm not going to definitely work on the hormones first. I mean, by the way, it's inevitably, okay, so if I work on your liver, I'm working on your hormones too because the conversion happens, but like to be direct. So, so we have to partition things out of the body and work it in a process in more of a deductive approach. Deductive versus inductive. Inductive is I give you a medication for your blood sugar because that's what the issue is. Deductive, I know that all these things add up to a blood sugar issue, so I'm more of a process that works on all these things that add up to that blood sugar, like sleep, all that. So I know that these things are like the key to metabolic function. Okay, so I know that if we get the stress under control and we work on all that. And I know that if I stimulate the thyroid with a shit ton of carbs that I'm feeding you, and the like different like supplementation, not only just like thyroid boost, but like using like the adaptogen support for the HPA axis, using even like different gut supplements because there's relationships there that can support thyroid production. Okay. And so by using specific medical foods and some of the juices and things like that, I'm working on liver detox. Okay. So I'm using all these different things to help with these systems in the body. Now, by eating balanced meals, obviously, or just eating more frequently and using specific juices, foods. I'm also helping balancing blood sugar as well. Okay. And then we go to the GI tract. Obviously, we're working on, we're flushing the bad bacteria out anyway. So, that's a relationship too. Gut motility, GI tract, and then sex hormones, getting rid of excess estrogen. And then I'll have to see directly estrogen detoxification supplementation, progesterone support to help balance out all these systems, because we have to fix pretty much the cell.
Right.
Now, I know you were talking about, so I know that if we fix the cell, you essentially like start the healing process. So what happens is I'll work this, and then I'll go to the GI tract, and then I'll go to sex hormones and insulin, even though we're technically working on all of it, but
right,
partitioning out in more of an isolation approach. Because if I just was like, hey, I'm just going to give you a meal plan with some chaseberry and saw palmetto and GDA plus, that wouldn't really that would just be like, okay. Because we're not working on like the detox, we're not working on flushing the bad bacteria out of the gut. We're working on how thyroid function is actually producing and optimized, And a lot of this can come from different types of functional lab work and stuff like that. But I know that if we just run this process first, we can actually like prep the wound to start the healing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And like, I know we talked about this before. I've had so many tests done, and I know like our body regenerates, and every few months, like my results from a year ago or 2 years ago obviously aren't going to be the same as they are today, but I'm still having like the same problems. So I know that information, like I prefer this process you're doing, so I don't have to keep taking so many tests, because I've done them, and all that ever happens is like your practitioner throws some supplements and whatever, but they don't actually
even if they're natural, and
right.
I'm dealing with that right now. There's women that are like kind of like you, or even men that are playing around with these, like, I'm not saying playing around, they're doctors and everything, but they're like going to these like practitioners. They're going to these practitioners and they're taking these $400, $600 tests. And they're getting now you're gonna get their their very high quality pharmaceutical grade supplements that are another like 200. I know it's kind of like that, but now when I'm looking at 800, and then the end goal is, hey, come back in a month and pay for the time you're gonna be with me, and we're gonna hope it works.
Yeah, because that's like it's just like a hamster wheel. Like I keep going. I have functional doctors, and they're great to some extent. They help with some things. But it is a lot of like, here's a test, take these supplements, and that's it. Like
maybe follow this meal sheet.
Sorry?
So I was gonna say, like, maybe follow this meal sheet if they have that at least, or something.
They don't, right? They're like, well, they talk a little bit about diet, but like a lot of them are like, keep exercising. And I think for some people like me, like you address this, you're like, I don't know if we should be training hard right now, because your body's already so depleted. So like a lot of people miss that, which I thought was really cool that you kind of, touched on that. But yeah, I'm just like, I will take tests, but I would rather not like start there again, because I've had so many done. I think I could give them to you and you could look at them and you'd probably say, I would advise the same thing that I'm going to do now anyways, based off of your
that's 100% what I say to everyone coming in. Like these people want to come into me and they want to get all these Dutch testing and everything. I'm like, whoa, we don't need to do that. Like we know what's like, even just like you doing the symptom thing. And I'm not being, you know, ignorant by saying we know what's going on, but like we could take an estimated guess that, okay, you're dealing with this issue, this issue, this issue. So rather me having to look at a piece of paper that says you got this issue, I'd rather do something about the issue.
Yeah.
You know?
You already know,
like
what's going to help it anyways. So
yeah.
I'm like, why? We don't need to test again. But 100%. I could send you those and you can look over them if you want to kind of see where I was out about a year, maybe 2 years ago. It's the same
and like what I see,
issues.
Yeah, like if it's like, you know, basically hypo and estradiol's through the roof and testosterone, I don't know if the androgens they don't even do androgens, but if testosterone's elevated, you know, obviously you do your cortisols.
Like low, actually, which was weird. It's come up a little bit, but it was like really it was like totally non-existent at some point.
Yeah, that makes sense sometimes, especially if you're like in a very catabolic state, you'd say, like under eating or overtraining or like that type of state.
Yeah.
So, okay, so if I really want to get more technical, because I feel like you're ready. So,
listen, I'm ready. So I'm in functional nutrition like certification, and I've been so sick for so long. Like, I feel like you and me could vibe on these type of things because, you know, I know about them. So feel free to nerd out. I love it.
Yeah. So, and I'm definitely getting more involved too with other people, but essentially I want you to look at this, and this is called mitochondria. What do I call it? Something like that, something with the mitochondria, but essentially this is your cell. This is your cell. So technically we have your cell, and then inside your cell is the mitochondria and then the DNA. So inside that cell, inside the mitochondria, there's energy pathways like mTOR and AMPK. Okay. So mTOR is more so sugar burning state. Okay. But you know mTOR as like bodybuilding, muscle building, hormone building, like very anabolic, essentially. Very anabolic. All right. Sugar burning, anabolic, muscle building, all that. You know, AMPK is fat burning. Okay. Catabolic.
Right.
Catabolic. So it wants to use fat as energy, you know? So we have this cell. And so what actually happens is that, you know, when we're driving with inflammation and everything like that, you know, mTOR gets elevated. So we stay stuck into a sugar burning state.
Right. That's where I'm at.
You know, and we think about cell proliferation. So it's almost all disease is actually in mTOR. So like if we're talking about proliferation, that's like if you're dealing with cancer, like that will be proliferating. So there's going to be more cancer cells coming. Because mTOR is that building block. Because you can't just, you know, there's mutations of those negative cells, you could say in super simple terms. So how does that happen? By running on mTOR. So if we stay driving mTOR for so long, you know, we stay stuck because there's inflammation driving up. Our cells can't hear the message of different hormones at the receptor sites because there's just so much, you know, inflammation there, and we're staying stuck in the sugar burning state. That's why you're eating a high protein diet, but all that's happening is that protein is converting into glucose in your body. Neoglucogenesis, meaning that you're eating that chicken breast, but it's turning into a Snickers bar in your body. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to go into AMPK, but we can't do that right now because, well, we can, but we can't drive you into AMPK by throwing you an intermittent fasting or fasting. You know why? Because your body's already stressed. If I told you not to eat, that'd be like one of the dumbest things I could do because you're already stressed out. Right. So what we need to do is harness mTOR. Harness mTOR. How do we do that? That strategic refeed, okay? So I want you to say this is your potential metabolism, and this is your actual metabolism. And this is intake. Okay. Intake. So what I'm trying to do is you're at this metabolic capacity. I'm trying to get you into this metabolic capacity to your potential. Okay, because if I get to that potential, I can fire up mTOR, which is, metabolism in super simple terms. Like, I'm never going to go on my Instagram and be like, hey, we're going to fire mTOR, all that. No. So we're going to fire mTOR, like metabolism, and so when we get you to your potential, when we get you there and I cut your calories, it's way easier to go into AMPK. So
Right.
our rate of efficiency is a lot higher.
Yeah.
So what that means is that you are going to burn fat a lot faster. You're going to, weight's going to come off faster. Like, all that's going to be a lot easier for you to happen because we just reset your metabolic function. But I just set it into a very, scientific to the cell scenario.
Right.
Thank you.
Are you back?
Yeah.
It froze up a little bit. You're good.
Yeah. So, okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I continue feeding you up. Okay. Till we get to your potential or above it. So we look at your weight and we look at your height and we look at, it was like 5.
I'm 5
foot.
feet even. Yeah. So for me, when you're like
Yeah.
2,200 calories, like that kind of blows my mind because I'm so little.
Well, I have to see. I think right now I gave you 2,400.
Oh, okay.
So what that is, though, is that, remember back to my buttons. I talked about, I'm working on all these buttons, these buttons to the metabolism.
Yeah.
So if I stimulate these buttons, what happens is your body becomes more efficient with those calories. So what that means is that when your body becomes more efficient with those calories, you burn more calories. Okay, so if you, I don't know if you like sometimes when you try to get, so you look at if you look at super anabolic bodybuilders, like big dudes, when they eat a lot of carbs, they start sweating because their body's fueling that, coming from the thyroid, because thyroid, the carbohydrates feed the thyroid a lot, and so that's essentially what we want. Because maybe you eat and you get cold. That's the opposite of what we want. We want you to be firing. Like, we want metabolism to be firing. Because think about, if you thought about metabolism like a fire, if you have low wood, low calories, then the fire is low.
Yeah.
But if I throw a bunch of wood at you, and maybe throw a little bit of gasoline by optimizing your liver, your thyroid, your adrenals, I can, make that fire spark.
Right.
So by me throwing the gasoline on the fire, that's like me working on this detox type pathways, to exceed your metabolic capacity, because you maybe never thought that you'd eat 2,400 calories. And I might even feed you more because I'm trying to exceed it and see what we can do with you.
Yeah.
I feel
like when I didn't worry about calories or food or whatever, and I was thin, without really thinking about it, I ate carbs all the time. It was no big deal. It's just that restriction has ruined my body in so many ways.
Yeah, 100%. And what I'm trying to get you to be is, we're trying to get to that spot where your body doesn't feel like it's punished when you're having those those nights out or whatever, I'm trying to get you, because you obviously see people obviously like me personally, if I went out right now and had a bunch of cake and a bunch of burgers and fries, I'd wake up tomorrow and I'd be just fine. But if you did that, maybe you wake up tomorrow and you feel bloated, have edema,
Yeah.
So what we need to do is reset everything together, So that's what we're trying to do. So you're not feeling punished when you go and do those things anymore.
Right. And I don't necessarily feel bad. I'm not very reactionary to food. I used to be. I don't react a lot. Sometimes I do flush if I eat certain things. So I know that there's some gut issues with that. But my weight is just so stubborn, despite, the working out and the walking and the macro counting. And it's just will not move no matter what I do. And I refuse to be an Ozempic person or someone on metformin. I'm I'm not going to do that. I'm going to figure out what's wrong. But yeah, I don't know. It's a mess.
Yeah, for sure. And by kind of working on all these things at once, like working a specific process, I think that'd be a lot different for you than what you've tried in the past.
Yeah.
Instead of almost like throwing specific supplements at you, we kind of work an actual process that actually will help us get to our end goal.
Yeah.
Like it's not going to be we visit and then do these tests and then here we go.
I have a question about that too. So like I have been working with a coach for, I guess it's been like a year and a half. She's more of, she's like, you know, we count macros and she has a workout plan for me. It's nothing really beyond that, but I've been doing that for like a year and a half. And at some point, you know, I started to see changes, but again, the weight never dropped below 150. I know that I put on like 10 pounds of muscle because I did one of those in-body scans and I could see that the muscle was built. So, I mean, that was good. But then it's like ever since this fire and all this stress, like I see no muscle tone. I don't see changes happening. And I guess that's probably due to the stress. Like what's your opinion? Because like I saw things starting to work and then it's like it completely stopped. And now, despite counting macros, despite working out, like weight keeps going up. And it just feels kind of weird because it was working and now it's not working. And so I'm like, what's your professional opinion about that?
I think you're dealing with a functional issue, not an issue with the musculoskeletal system. You're dealing with an issue with the endocrine system, gastrointestinal system, the lymphatic system, the immune system, you know? And when you look at like functional, we're looking at all systems in the body working in unison to create functions, and those functions are how you feel. So by working on just the musculoskeletal system, we're neglecting the other 11 systems in the body.
Right.
You know, so if I continue,
no amount of that is going to like fix the actual internal issue.
Yeah. And I was like that once as well before I educated myself and started diving into all this. And so like when we are just looking at it, it's really nice too because I'm able to like, you know, I'm kind of a one-on-one when I'm able to identify like because I can do fitness. I have clients that do that, like fitness coaching, like I do. And then I have clients that, you know, have all these issues like you guys, and I'm doing that, you know. So I'm a hybrid. That's why my name is hybrid, but no one knows what I mean. Anyway.
Is that what I should call you from now on?
Hybrid. No. Anyway, so when we're just neglecting all those other systems, obviously that plays a role in things. Like if I just gave you, you know, either like if it's super high protein diet and some, you know, 5 days a week of training, that's straight up musculoskeletal system.
Right.
But if I have you eating specific functional foods like walnuts that support selenium that for the thyroid, or if I give you something else that is more of a functional food to have you, you know, flush out the system and then support different micronutrients that support, you know, like broccoli supporting estrogen detoxification. See, these are different things that people aren't just thinking about.
Right.
By supporting other systems of the body, like maybe using different things to help with gut junction, so the tightening of the mucosa lining, using specific things that helps with the thyroid, using specific things that help balance your hormones out, using specific things that balance your blood sugars out. You know, we're not just neglecting all other systems. So by just working on musculoskeletal system, it's neglecting everything else, almost like if I was just giving you medication.
Yeah. Okay.
And we got to think about lifestyle too. It's just like, obviously there's a ton of stress. There's a lot of HPA, CRH coming out, you know, maybe some neurotransmitter imbalance as well.
There is, because I learned that from the Dutch test. So you're right. And we didn't have to do a Dutch test. And you already know.
Yeah, some neurotransmitter imbalance. I'm just knowing it. Okay. So obviously neurotransmitter imbalance, maybe deficiency as well. Like maybe there's not enough serotonin, maybe there's not enough dopamine, you know, maybe that's why you're not feeling the motivation drive like once was, you know. Like people don't even realize it's like, oh, I got low hormones. No, you just have low neurotransmitters. Like, you know,
it's a dopamine issue.
Yeah, exactly. Like if it's dopamine, then there's a lot going on. You know, that's a main one for like focus, even mood.
Yeah.
So like, just working the process and then hitting those specific things. Because like, obviously, I was getting into another woman, but I was talking about like, hey, I know actually a lot of things about like neurotransmitters. Like I know supplements that help with like brain function almost, but like specifically neurotransmitters.
Mm-hmm.
Like if we're looking at like dopamine, we can use like even like with the herbal adrenals, like the ones that you're using, like those have like tyrosine and rhodiola, which all those help with dopamine uptake inhibitor. Like it's called a MAOI.
Mm-hmm.
And so what it does is like helps your dopamine uptake stay elevated throughout the day rather than crash. You know,
Right.
because there's inverse. Because I want you to think about inverse relationships everywhere. You know, I want you to think about if your cortisol is jacked up, your blood sugar is jacked up. If your cortisol is jacked up, your neurotransmitters are jacked up. You know, if your gut's messed up, if your thyroid's messed up, your gut motility is messed up. So just keep thinking about communication with the body. So like, if I'm dealing with, I don't know, poor blood sugar balance, well, that can throw off my hormones. Like, I don't want you to think about like just my blood sugars are off. No, I want you to think about it as like, okay, my blood sugar's off, but there's other things that tie into these blood sugar issues.
Right.
You know, so that's just more of kind of more so background of like what we're doing. Just more so like in the educational portions to just kind of see, does this sound like something you've done before or not?
No, I mean, again, I've had a functional doctor or a few of them, but it was mostly like, let's test, here's a supplement, and then they kind of like leave you to your own devices.